Welcome, friends. Back to the show. My name is Jack the Snuck that smiles back. Tibbles is here too in spirit. Not because he's dead, he's just in another room right now. But enough about our cuddly overlord. You want to hear about some schmitty people? Yeah, alright, okay, let's get started. We begin with a story that's been updated just after 2 years of absence. It actually began close to this very day 2 years ago. Am I the a-hole for bringing a camper while camping? I know this sounds a bit odd, but I'm 32 male, and I'm not a big fan of camping. I don't like it, but I don't really hate it either. My sister loves it though, and every time she invites me on a camping trip, something happens. My sister and her husband love to camp with friends multiple times a year. Our mother always calls me up begging I go too. And the reason why is because my sister and brother-in-law use camping as a reason to get wasted and act like teenagers. They have 2 kids, both boys, 10 and 9 years old. So someone needs to stay sober and be responsible. My sister and brother-in-law love to screw with me too. They don't like to let me sleep in and would literally collapse my tent on me to wake me up. Last year, I brought one of those cots that's its own small tent. They pushed me over in it like they were cow tipping. I've had enough. So this year, I took some measures. I only go along with the camping for the sake of my nephews. They're good kids. So this year, I got a used camper without telling anyone, and met my sister and the rest of her group at the campsite with it. Well, she looked not pleased when she saw it, but didn't say she was upset. Everyone else seemed to love the camper though. During the camping, all of the usual stuff happened, except anytime they tried to screw with me, I just went into the camper and locked the door. Also, it meant that I got a better night's sleep. Now, around 8 a.m., I heard someone outside fiddling with the doorknob. They were trying to prank me again. They ended up resorting to using an air horn, so I just put in some earplugs. They then tried to rock the truck, but it must have been too heavy because they stopped after a few seconds. I didn't get up until 11. I made myself breakfast, got to do my business in a portable toilet, and had a decent place to change clothes. When I finally came outside, my sister looked enraged. The entire time we were camping, stuff went on like this, but they couldn't mess with me when I locked myself in a box. I got good sleep for once on these trips. My nephews were always wanting in my camper to hang out. We played Uno at the table a few times, and I had a refrigerator filled with soda. When the trip was over, my sister confronted me and said that next time she was making a tents-only rule. And I said I wouldn't be going then because my camper and I are a package deal. She told me she hated the camper and that it wasn't necessary. I said she only hated it because she can't mess with me now that I have it. I was sick of all the stupid pranks. And if they wanted me to help with the kids on camping trips, then my camper comes with. And they have to stop messing with me. Well, she called me a jackass and walked away to fume. Now, the only other person who's giving me crud is her husband. But everyone else says the camper is cool. So am I the a-hole for getting it?
You brought a device for the very thing you're doing? Disgusting! Undoubtedly, this man is indeed my own butt, denying his dear sibling the chance to have some fun. Doesn't he know it's the man's job in all of society to make sacrifices, and in this case you are sacrificing your leisure for her leisure. A real man would just fold over and submit to her annoying antics.
Okay, yeah, but seriously, obviously everyone agrees that not the a-hole your sister and brother-in-law need to grow the hell up. The fact that they think they're pranks? No, they're not. The best way to tell if something is a legitimate prank is if the person you've been pranking actually laughs with you. If they don't, it's not a prank, it's bullying. Now that said, some still wanted to argue that Opie is the a-hole still in this situation for just letting this all happen to them. But do you think that's still valid when they've now made some changes by bringing this camper van along to stop all this happening? I suppose it could be fair to say that maybe the only reason the sister keeps doing this stuff is because you keep letting it happen. You've convinced her to believe that you are fine with these things because you keep, again, enabling it. You're not stopping at the moment it happens. Others would argue that, hey, it might not actually be the fact that she can't prank you that she's frustrated and upset about. It's the fact you brought all this modern tech to what should just be a moment to get away from all of that. Especially this younger generation of kids, how much they're exposed to technology. You're trying to help encourage your kids to reset from all that stuff, and then here you come along with ice cold drinks the moment they want it, charged technology the moment they want to play it instead of, being outside in nature that for once won't risk them getting run over because a car's driving by at like 100 miles an hour. It's from that point, I can actually see where the sister is coming from. I mean, do you too? Or do you think it's definitely a case where she just wants to be able to belittle and annoy her brother without any sort of repercussions? Because as we learn in the update, those who are heavily downvoted may have actually had the right mindset into what the sister's intentions were all along. So, update. I've shown this post to my sister and brother-in-law. They weren't happy. Frankly, they were mad. But they spent some time reading the comments and are now extremely embarrassed. They've agreed that if I keep camping with them to help with the kids, there will be no more pranking me. They and their friends are free to prank each other, but I and my camper are off limits to their shenanigans. Now see, I feel like that's a very important thing that should have been brought up too. It wasn't just the brother here, OP, being pranked. It was everyone else there as well. It's hard to argue that this was bullying then, if OP wasn't actually targeted specifically in the first place. Seems to me, in my opinion, that this was more a case of a group of people who like to play rough, and unfortunately there was one person who just wasn't raising their hand up enough to say, hey, I actually don't want to be a part of this. They're especially not doing this after I pointed out that if they cause any sort of damage, it'll be on them financially. What's more, when they learned it's a potential criminal offense to rock my camper the way they did because it can cause injury, so they said they'd never try that again. They're also not going to do the air horn anymore for obvious reasons. My sister is actually very upset that so many here called her out as a bully, especially since I agreed with them. When I asked her why she was so dead set on messing with me, she said she really didn't know. I told her that it didn't really matter. Bullying is bullying, and we're not kids anymore. My brother-in-law initially defended her, but was sucked into it as well for always going along with her antics, to which I called him a complete tool. He's currently moping about it. He and my sister are both extremely upset to be called out as acting like kids, or actually more like a drunken frat. They were especially sore when I pointed out that we're not young anymore. I'm actually the younger sibling. My sister is 35 and the brother-in-law is 36. The arguments did start out with things like, why can't you just lighten up? And me saying, why can't you just respect my choice to stay out of the pranking and leave me the hell alone? And it remained a stalemate until my sister and brother-in-law went through all of the comments. On top of all that, I think I may have started a camper trend, because at least one of the couples my sister and brother-in-law are close with are in the market for one now too, since they have a GMC Sierra. That'll hold one just fine. The days of tents-only camping may actually be over. Lastly, there is my mother. She was the most unhappy finding out about this post, but I told her I really didn't care what she thought, because she insisted I keep going on the camping trips despite the relentless pranking because the children. I called her out that if she was so concerned with that, she'd have gone too. She's retired and has plenty of time on her hands, and she whined that she hates camping. And I sarcastically nodded and said, oh, you see, now you get how I felt. She hasn't apologized, but did admit I was right. Now, I'm still going to be doing camping, because what's the point of having a camper if I don't use it? But it's more for myself now. I'll go on my own time. And if I go with my sister and brother-in-law again, they aren't allowed to screw with me. Thank you everyone here for all your input. It's really been a game changer. He ends it with some extra info in another post. He sort of cross-posted this around Reddit, mentioning a greater keenness for camping out in the woods for a few days at a time now. That despite going to be out in the woods and stuff, he'd still be interested in getting some solar panels and being able to set up some old gaming consoles to play out in the wilderness. And look, I will say it as someone who did this when he was a kid. Nothing better than feeling like a nice light breeze in the shade of a tree right outside a beach, playing some Halo on the Xbox. Like, oh, childhood memory right there. But okay, you're probably wondering, that sounds rather resolved. Why would there be a 2-year update? Karen Lady told me I was entitled for having a camper because I wouldn't loan her my heater. It's been around 2 years, but I'm back. I guess you could call this half an update, half a new situation. I posted before about my sister and her husband pranking me relentlessly while we were camping together, and I bought a cabover camper that kept me safe from their shenanigans. I used to not like camping that much, but since getting the camper, I've enjoyed it quite well, blah, 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 blah. I had solar panels installed on it and put in a small TV that I played retro video games on. My nephews love the camper too, so much that even my sister and brother-in-law begrudgingly gave up tents last year because of how much their kids said they didn't want to sleep in tents anymore. I guess you could say they were the last in the group to do so. Rather than a cabover, they got a camper trailer since they have an SUV. Their friends all got campers before them too. Pretty much every single person who was in the yearly tent camping friend group now have campers of varying sorts. It ended up being like a keep up with the Joneses mentality. I got a camper, and then someone else did, and then someone else after that. And now it's all of them. I guess you could say it's more like we're all glamping now. But we love it until we hear one of the campers rocking at night. Anyway, that's when the earplugs come in handy. Even my mother, who previously hated camping and had forced me to go all those times just to babysit the drunks, now has a camper. She got a little one-person teardrop camper that tows behind her Subaru with ease, and she loves a quiet night laying in it and reading her favorite books. She mainly comes along for the sake of my nephews, though, because she kept putting it on me before, and I called her out for it. My sister was initially a bit of a witch about the situation, though. She had some sort of crazy idea that she was in charge when we went camping, and my brother-in-law just went along with it, to which I called him a tool. Well, once their camper craze hit, the following summer it was half campers, half tents, and my sister told me it was all my fault that things had changed. I told her to stop acting like she was half her age and move on. Besides, this only started because I just wanted peace and had to buy a camper just to get it. Had they respected me instead of treating me like a target, maybe things would still be as they were. She tried to argue further, but I threatened to make a spectacle of the situation if she didn't let it go. Later, I heard it was quite a scuffle between my sister and brother-in-law when he finally said they needed a camper too. Boy, do I wish I could have been a fly on the wall for that. But it worked, because now they have a small camper trailer. An 80s model, I think. Brother-in-law bought it with some damage and fixed it up himself. Though, unlike me, they don't allow video game systems in their camper, so the kids come to me a lot. Near the end of last July, my sister asked me to set aside time off work to go on one more camping trip in early September before school started for her kids. And I agreed, albeit reminding her that I wanted no pranks done to me. And she made it pretty clear she was still unhappy. I'm a spoiled sport about it. Oh, but what could she do? It didn't end well for her after making my last post. None of the people in the group have tried to mess with me while trying to reclaim their frat youth since they were called out as bullies 2 years ago. But the funny thing is, having campers now is actually making them act a bit more their age when they drink. And I'm pleased to say I haven't seen any of them so crazy that they're running around in their underwear and yelling out random nonsense anymore. But they still say and do stupid stuff. And while I don't enjoy those shenanigans, I do like the drinking games, the campfires, the barbecue, the marshmallows, etc. It's a nice escape from my home life. Now, it was getting chilly early last year in our area, with fall making its way in a little sooner than expected. So the last few days before school started, we had mild rain and temperatures in the mid-60s during the day, and even colder at night. Fine with me, I have a propane buddy heater, so I wasn't cold. But bragging about the heater was what drew in a wild Karen. I never before met one on this level. I mostly just read about them online, but by God, she was just like the ones I've heard so much about. She didn't really have the Kraken look though. She had long shoulder-length brown hair, maybe late 30s to early 40s, and was a bit thick. But man, did she have a mean look about her that just made me want to turn and go the other way. The campsite we went on had a small vendor store at it that sold basic supplies and some foods. I rode in on my old mountain bike and bought a soda. I'd met another guy while out riding on the trails, and he had a crazy bike made out of a vintage beach cruiser I learned was called a clunker. He was very specific that it was spelled with a K, and he told me he builds clunkers for fun out of his garage and gives them away. We were having fun talking about bikes, but then we started feeling the soft patter of rain and the evening chills were coming in. The guy I rode with said it was going to suck sleeping that night since he was camping in the canopy of his truck. I remarked that I'd be warm because I have a portable propane heater, and how I just need to turn it on for an hour before bed and I sleep nice and toasty. Then some lady I'd never met before stepped in front of us and asked me about my heater. I quickly described what it was, how much it was, and where to get one before moving along. But this woman started following me. I locked my bike and then ended up face to face with this lady like when Victor was turned and was face to face with the corpse bride. She was suddenly asking to borrow my heater and coming closer at the same time. I got really awkward with her and tried to get her to let it go. But being polite got me nowhere. The lady kept stepping in front of me and was whining about how it was colder and wetter than expected, and she and her kids couldn't go home for 2 more days. I just told her sorry and ran around her to my camper. But she kept following and was berating me that I have no compassion for a mother. Inside the camper, my 2 nephews were in there playing Mario Kart Double Dash on a GameCube I'd brought, and the woman instantly became furious about my setup. She refused to let me close the door and yelled that I might as well just be at home if this was the kind of camping I'm doing. Then she actually tried to force her way in while yelling something about me being entitled and had it too good while her kids didn't hardly have anything. I blocked the way in and nearly shoved her out with my foot. Now enter my mother. She's a bit of a kraken in her own right, but most definitely a mama bear too. She saw enough of what happened to interject before I got the chance to push the lady out. My mother yelled at her to get away from her son and grandbabies. The 2 of them had an epic screaming match that my sister soon joined in on, until a few more people in our camping group showed up and began laying into that lady too. Realizing how outnumbered she was, the Kraken took off. She didn't bother us again. And one of the guys in our camping group was kind of upset by that because he was keeping a super soaker loaded and ready in case she did come back. I did see the Karen a couple more times around the area, but she avoided eye contact. I did see her campsite while riding my bike, and she had an okay-looking tent, but her kids really didn't look happy. I don't know what her story was or why she was stuck there. Maybe she was temporarily without residence or something. I don't know. But I do know that she went way too far before when trying to get into my camper. Her problems weren't mine to solve. Now, sadly, I didn't notice till right as we were all packing up to leave, but the tires on my bike had been slashed. I couldn't prove it was the Kraken, but I'm pretty sure it was her. I fixed the bike easily enough, though. I just needed new tubes and tires, but I was still mad. Rest in peace that bike, though, because my neighbor's son, who just got his driver's license, ran it over last November. I mean, it was old anyway. My brother-in-law gave me his old mountain bike to replace it, and I saved the new tires I bought for my old one to put on it. Now, I waited all this time since the incident to post because I figured my sister would go looking here right away. I don't know whether she did or not, but it's here now. So on one hand, I do enjoy the theory that maybe this woman is genuinely in a terrible situation right now, can't find a decent place to live, housing crisis and all that. She hears someone has a setup that he only needs to use a thing for a single hour of his night and he's good for the rest of the night. It seems evident that her kids are miserable. Well, if I manage to give these kids a nice warm night's sleep for once, I'll do anything for my kids. I mean, any parent would understand that. And then when this stranger is just brushing you off with something that is just borrowing something for free for an hour, she finds out he's kind of living in this more luxurious lifestyle that, again, he's refusing to share this thing that wouldn't be a huge burden on him at all. I can understand her kind of snapping like she did. Life hasn't been fair to her, and he was the nearest thing she could blow up at. But that said, as this comment says, if you had loaned her that heater, you would never have seen it again. Which, going off my theory of it all, I think was absolutely valid. If she is as desperate as she was, there is no way she would have given that heater back after using it just once. My friend's sister was openly flirting with my husband in front of me. I told her off publicly, and now they want a public apology from me. What action should I take so that I don't ruin my friendship? Beginning just around mid-March, I'm 31 female, and I'm close friends with Lisa, 33 female. We met at college and became roommates, and I love her to death. Lisa has a sister, Amy, who's in their 20s and female, whom I've met occasionally in college, but she was so young at the time we were never really hanging out. Now, Lisa had a bridal shower in February, and I financially contributed to most of it since I wasn't able to be there in person to help with the planning. I gave money to Amy to pay for everything, the decor, food, and alcohol. I even paid for an overnight stay at a hotel for all 7 girls. I did all of this because I couldn't make it to her bachelorette party the week before. I had also paid for the limo Amy wanted to host the party in. At the shower, I saw Amy, and she was gushing about how I had spent a lot of money on Lisa. I just said if it's for Lisa, I would have paid for anything. Amy was hinting that my job was paying so much money for me to spend on Lisa this much. I'm a new surgeon, just graduated from residency. I got a pay bump, but not a lot. I'm lucky because my husband is supporting me while I go through fellowship. My husband, 40 male, is a doctor too, but so much more advanced in his career than me. For my wedding gift, he paid off the remainder of my student loans. He is amazing, and I am obsessed with him. So Lisa's wedding happened in March. My husband and I came for the wedding. Family and close friends were invited to Lisa's parents' place for dinner after. Amy was very handsy with my husband even during the wedding. She was asking him about his job, how smart he was to be working in the ICU, how hot he was, how he looks like a young Elaine Delon, blah blah. For reference, a young Elaine Delon. Goddamn, OP, you really did catch a good one. My husband was giving me signals to come to him, and I did. This happened at least 2 more times. At Lisa's parents, Amy was wrapping her arm around my husband's back and was serving him drinks and food. I told Lisa's mom about how Amy's making me and my husband very uncomfortable, and her mom pulled her aside and told her off. I think because she came out grumpy. She was still acting like a crazed teenager because we wanted to leave. I mean, she wouldn't give my husband his jacket back to him and kept sniffing it. I had a feeling that she was drunk and completely out of it. My husband raised his voice and told her to stop messing around and give it to him. I yelled, "Can you stop being so difficult? You've been shamelessly flirting with my husband in front of me the whole day. Give me the damn jacket and leave us alone." I got a text from Lisa's mom demanding I publicly apologize to Amy, as in post on social media a heartfelt apology, because some of the guests heard me yell at her and thought I was overreacting and humiliated her.
How dare you expose my daughter for behaving almost Oscar-worthy, akin to a creepy guy who doesn't respect a woman at the bar.
Thankfully, Lisa is on my side and told me Amy has always had gold-digging tendencies, and that this isn't the first time she's done something like this. She flirted with her friend's dad and their next-door neighbor who is married when she thought that they were wealthy. Lisa said that she'll handle it. I already felt so bad I ruined the last moments of her wedding day, and now she has to deal with this. I'm ruminating on this a lot lately and wondering if I should apologize to Amy. I don't want to, but then again, if I did, I would explain exactly what happened and how it merited my reaction to her. Though this might add fuel to the fire. There is so much drama right now, and I want to preserve my friendship with Lisa. So, notable advice: get on your knees and grovel. They are too important to have in your life. Your dignity be damned, woman! Bow and scrape and pray to God it works. You cannot survive without her knowing that she has the right to flirt with anybody she wants. If your husband prefers her to you afterward and leaves you for her, then so be it. Yeah, just kidding. Frick 'em. Interestingly, people still actually do believe that OP should apologize. And you can see their point. You were already on your way out. You didn't really need to yell at her entirely, but I still think you were valid to be stern about you not appreciating her behavior. But of course, it's very difficult to look past the fact that this was all the sisters doing in the first place. You wouldn't have resorted to behaving like this if she didn't keep, pushing you and your husband's boundaries. What's even more interesting too is that someone questions in the comments, okay, are the guests at the wedding also your Facebook friends? How is a public apology on social media actually going to fix anything to the sisters' reputation here? Well, the OP explains that her mom wants me to tag her and Lisa so that their family can see it. But I don't even use Facebook anymore, but her family are still active on it. So yeah, take that tactic of the mothers how you will. But okay, 6 days passed, we get an update. Did OP fold to save her friendship, or did she stick to her guns? Well, in no hope for the OP, previous post got so popular that Amy's mom found it and texted me to take it down, in all caps. I got around to read most of the comments a day after I posted when I finished my shift. I didn't not apologize to anyone or did anything at all, frankly. I forgot about it since I had people close to dying on me left and right at work. I I gaslit Amy's mom into thinking that I never did such a thing and that I did not have a Reddit account. I mean, she believed it, I think, since she didn't text me back. I mean, come on, the details I put in that post were exactly what she experienced and she didn't find it odd. Anyway, for clarification, one of you said that I had a spine of a jellyfish. I loved that comment. And not apologizing was the right thing to do. I was hesitant and was actually considering giving that apology because of the fact that she fed me and let me stay in her home during Thanksgiving and Christmas many years ago when I couldn't go home to my family. See, I'm the kind of person who'll remember every good thing you do for me and do my best to reciprocate or even get even so as to not be indebted to you. I don't know what kind of mental illness is that. I never retained much of the psychiatric info from medical school. Also, a lot of people insinuated that me being docile and restrained in those kinds of situations makes me a bad surgeon, to which I say, I beg your effing pardon. Would you want someone who's operating on you to have a criminal record for causing bodily harm or homicide? Like, also, I've dealt with worse than Amy. I've survived handling 19 psychotic patients with TBIs for a whole rotation. Me being aggressive would have gotten me kicked out of my fellowship. But okay, the things that have transpired. One, I tried to avoid contacting Lisa since she went off on her honeymoon, but because of the popularity of my previous post, I decided to give her a heads up. Lisa was more than apologetic. In fact, she FaceTimed me and we had a very teary conversation about her family. There were a lot more going on that I never knew. But mine and my husband's involvement in her family drama was the last straw. She had decided to go no contact with her mom and sister. She also warned me that Amy might approach my husband in some way, but no idea how. She's also getting her extended family involved about Amy. My husband does not have any social media. So hot. And he did not give out his number to anyone at all during the wedding. He is anal about loyalty and transparency in our marriage. We have access to each other's electronics. I know he would never cheat on me. Now, disturbingly, 3 days ago, someone called my husband's clinic asking to get his number for an emergency and that she needed to get a hold of his wife. The nurse who answered refused to give a physician's personal number and the conversation got heated. My husband's colleague, another intensivist, took over and asked her to tell him what the emergency was so that he could tell my husband himself. The person on the phone argued some more, and when the doctor wouldn't give it, she hung up. That friend told my husband what happened and said the woman didn't give her name but had a very high-pitched, childlike voice. My husband immediately knew it was Amy, but we have no proof. I know it was her. She must have searched my husband's name on Google and found where he worked since his professional profile is online along with the name of his hospital. I'm getting more and more irritated by this whole thing and have gone full mama bear mode over my husband. He was furiously annoyed after the wedding and was saying if the genders were switched, he would have definitely gotten punched, not even halfway through the wedding. My husband had terrible experiences with women before. 2 women at different times tried to baby trap him. One did some Sherlock level manipulation and one harassed us when we were dating. He is usually a cool and calm guy, but now he hasn't been smiling or joking around with me like he always does ever since the wedding. Anywho, my uncle, our lawyer, was consulted. A security at my husband's department and around our home have been notified. Thank you, guys. Okay, I know what you're thinking. How convenient that their uncle happens to be a lawyer, okay? It's very, how typical. They just happen to have a family lawyer. Even someone in the comments actually points this out, to which the OP's response, and if you know any families like this, you totally understand. I'm half Asian. That uncle is Asian too. That should answer your question. So yeah, despite it commonly becoming too convenient for a story to be true in that case, it's very understandable that they happen to have an uncle who's a lawyer. After all, it's one of the many various Asian career options. A, doctor, B, lawyer, C, engineer, and D, disgrace to the family. Still, it's crazy to believe that at one point Opie was actually considering, as this comment saying, apologizing to the woman who was flirting with her husband. Imagine apologizing to the person who is openly disrespecting you and your existence. Now, despite that sounding like someone who does have the spine of the jellyfish, I do agree to the point that technically Opie was planning to do malicious apologizing, where she was just going to basically explain exactly what Amy did and then say, I'm sorry for reacting to you doing that. It's like a YouTuber level of apology. It's great. I love it. Anyway, friends, might end today's video there. Thank you as always for watching. I love your face and make sure you're drinking water and keeping hydrated. Until next time, you be good. Bye-bye.